So tonight we'll go through the assignment overview, criteria, and then time for question at the end. A very quiet group today, so please feel free to take the mic. First of all, I'd like to go through the acknowledgement of country. We respectfully acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, who are the traditional landowners on the land of which Swinburne's Australian campuses are located in Melbourne's east and outer east, and pay our respect to their elders, past, present and emerging. We are honoured to recognise our connection to the Wurundjeri country, history, culture and spirituality through these locations, and strive to ensure that we operate in a manner that respects and honours the elders and ancestors of these lands. We also respectfully acknowledge Swinburne's Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander staff, students, alumni, partners and visitors. We also acknowledge and respect the traditional owners of the lands across Australia, their elders, ancestors, cultures and heritage, and recognise their continuing sovereignties of all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island nations. We respectfully recognise the diversity of the country we are grateful to live and learn. What country are you respecting? I'm also from Wurundjeri country. Thanks, Peter and Kylie. A couple of people from Wurundjeri. Okay, so let's look at a bit of an overview. Peter did a great job on the Flip Collab, although I'm still going to touch on it because some details are so important and just ensuring that you don't miss anything. So with assignment 2, you're required to include 4 learning experience, more specifically, 1 from each of the science categories. It would be really great to see you learning from this unit, and I hope that you have thoroughly enjoyed the unit. It is actually my favourite to facilitate. Just a reminder that this unit is for the early years and focuses on ages 3 to 5, which includes foundation level in primary. There are 2 options, so you can choose 2 early childhood learning plans for ages 3 to 5 and 2 lesson plans for foundation level, or you can choose 4 early child learning plans for children aged 3 to 5. And you can see that the word limit is 2,000 words plus or minus 10%, and the weighting is 50% and due 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, week 12 on Monday the 3rd of October. So does anyone have any questions yet? Everyone's pretty clear on there being 2 options, and with the ages we're asking you to include plans for? Thanks, Donna. Okay, so now let's look at the options. So with the templates, if you go into the Padlet, there is a template available that you can download the learning plan from. There is also an exemplar on the Padlet, and it is a good example of how you might like to set up your assignment. Just remember that exemplars are not necessarily HDs, they are just good examples. The template text is not included in the assignment, so don't stress. I know confining to the word count can be quite stressful, and Peter has broken down the word count that's contained in the lesson plan template, which is 319 words, and in the learning plan template, it's 344. So just deduct it from your final word count. And just to be clear, the lesson plan is for foundation level and the learning plan is for early childhood. Okay. So option one, which is a 2 early childhood plans and 2 foundation plans. When it comes to science, we are looking for you to demonstrate over the 4 plans that you show us an understanding of each science category, which of course is biological, chemical, physical, and earth and space science. It is the early years for children between 3 to 5 years. Now, one of these examples must show us digital technology and the other must be design focused. For example, you may have a biological focus with digital technology and a chemical focus with a design focus. They are both 500 words each. Then you have the 2 lesson plans for foundation level. And this can be really easy. So just go to the foundation level of the Australian curriculum and you can focus on that. So the second 2 of the foundation students must be physical and earth and space science, which is really important. Once again, these need to have a design and the other focus on digital technology, which are again 500 words each. I hope that's really clear. Just make sure you don't double up on your science categories. Are there any questions regarding option 1? No? Okay, so option 2 is a learning plans for early childhood, which once again is for children aged 3 to 5 years and 500 words each. One of each of the 4 science categories, 2 of these will be digital technology focus and 2 will be focused on the design technology. Just want to be clear on the digital technology that it really needs to be for a purpose and not basically just including a camera because it is a piece of digital technology. So, for example, if children are taking photos, what's the benefit having on their learning? And the the children have to use this piece of technology. So you can't use an interactive whiteboard used by the teacher. So, for example, if you're using the iPad app Shadow Puppets to take images of mixing the substances to make damper and recording their voice when describing what happens, such as what happens if they add too much or not enough water. Or when children taking photos outside of leaving things in the outdoor area, they're using the camera function of the iPad and locating these images in the camera roll to print and share with others. Now, I hope that hasn't confused everyone, but is that clear? Kylie, feel free to take the mic.
Sorry, the example that you first gave about voice recordings, was that yes, that's a good use or no?
Yeah, you can. It's absolutely up to you what digital technology you choose. I think we're just looking for it to, if you can clearly explain the benefit of having that recording, that's perfect. I
So,
think it's
what are you going to do with that recording, essentially? Like,
yeah, and
why
basically
do that?
like instead of just putting down it's the children are recording, explain how it benefits their learning. So I guess you'd
So,
think of it not
could it
using it versus
be,
using it.
can it be students are recording their hypothesis and outcomes to be uploaded into the student digital folio to engage parents with classroom learning? Is that something reasonable and suitable?
It can be, but yes, sorry, Peter, go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't want to talk over you. I was just going
No,
to
that's
say,
fine.
Kylie, just what you should think about as well is that if we use the voice recording example, what you'd be wanting is for your students to learn how to record the voice themselves. So their learning would be, let's say, if they're using the recording function on an iPad, you are actually instructing them so that they have a skill of how to use the record function on the iPad. So you wouldn't want the teacher just recording the children's voices and then uploading it onto Seesaw or something like that, because that doesn't benefit the children's learning in any way. Or in terms of technology learning. I mean, obviously they'd be learning good stuff if they're talking about their learning, but the technology side of it. Sorry, Steph, I'll stop butting in.
No, you're all good. I just wanted to highlight that the children have to use this piece of technology. Yeah. Okay, so just to recap, ensure you focus on each of the science categories. Make sure you include some of those science concepts as part of your learning plans. For example, animals in biological science. We want you to clearly explore the technology aspect as well. All 4 science learning areas must be addressed, as well as science understanding. Example recipes as part of chemical science. Once again, please do not ensure you double up. So the most important thing is that you remember we are just not wanting to see the science component, but also the science understanding, design technology, and digital technology. If you're really not sure, the Australian curriculum explains it really well. Even though you may be using the early childhood learning plans, it is an awesome resource if you feel like you don't have a great understanding yet. And just another pointer, even if you're not in Victoria, the Victorian curriculum is great as it has a section of how to scaffold the understanding prior to foundation level and gives you examples of suggested activities. So it's a great starting point. There's a scope and sequence as well as a curriculum area that gives you examples of suggested activities. It will give you a bit of understanding as to what sort of activities you can get some really good ideas of an experience you might like to include in the early childhood space. So what I'm going to do, give me a second, I will include these links. And you can check it out. And so it has different levels. So A, B, C, and D, which are all before foundation levels. It is not essential to use this at all, although you may choose to use it if you find it helpful. Design and technology. So it's all about using your imagination and designing things. Planning how you're going to make it. It is a bit of trial and error. Digital technology, which is using digital resources, might be a camera, video, digital microphone. Does anyone have any design technology or digital technology ideas that they would like to share or wanted clarification as to if it fits?
Can I ask, Steph, I just had a really good question in the chat. I'm just scrolling back about a walkie-talkie. What about something like walkie-talkies in an outdoor space on a bug hunt, etc.? That's from Donna. So I've just, I said that I would imagine that would be. I mean, if they're like a digital, if the walkie-talkie is like a digital device, that would, and they're learning how to use that appropriately, that would still work.
Absolutely.
Do you agree? Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, I do. Great question, Dana.
Sorry, I'm talking to myself now. You're trying to read I'm just looking through the chat again. So throughout the activity,
Yeah.
needs to be a prompt to how the children will learn to use. Okay, so I'm just looking through just a response to something else I've written up here. Taking photos. Oh, okay, yes, that's right. The one with taking photos and creating a timeline. And then we've got, so throughout the
I
activity,
love
there needs
your
to be a
idea,
connection
Kylie. That sounds awesome.
to how the children will learn to use the digital tech. Yes. So yeah, there needs to be a connection. Yeah. So the way that the learning behind, what am I trying to say? The children learning how to use the digital tech is actually one of the learning objectives of the lesson. So it underpins the entire lesson essentially. So yes, throughout the whole activity, that needs to be one of the goals that the children are going to develop from participating in that activity. I hope that's a bit more clear. Carry a carrot from the garden. Physical science. Oh yes, that idea is cool, Kylie. Let's just put there with the boat. Would it be correct to assume that photo and recording are two different digital technologies? Yeah. Taking a photo is a different skill to recording a video. Absolutely, it's a lot harder for young children to record videos that make any sense, I think, without shaking and everything. So that's definitely a secondary skill. With a response chart, what to wear. Shall I leave the chat to you now, Steph? I'll go on back. I'll take over the slides.
No worries.
Because I'm reading all these great ideas that are coming through. They look really cool. I was going to just add one thing just with regard to the design and technology. I hope I'm not repeating what you said already, Steph, because I was a bit distracted with the chat. But you just gave that awesome link to the Victorian curriculum descriptions A, B, C, and D. And I just want to support what you've said there because they're so fantastic, and I really encourage people to look at them because I think they're really helpful to make sure that you've got some ideas of relevant concepts for your students. And so what I wanted to read out, I copied this off the Victorian curriculum rationale for design and technologies. And what it says is that design and technologies engages students in creating quality design solutions for identified needs. So what you need to think about when you're using design is that you are presenting to your students a particular need, and then you're letting them come up with a way to solve that problem or meet that need. And to do that, they apply design thinking or even a design process. So I really encourage you to look into that and work out some different appropriate design processes for early years or for foundation, because it's really important that the students are learning about generating ideas and testing them and improving them essentially. So they're actually doing that design thinking. That's really important. Just didn't want to skip that because I noticed a lot when last time I marked these assignments that that was something I felt people sort of hadn't clicked onto very much. Okay, so let's have a look now. These are some of the things that you'll need to fill in on your lesson plan or your learning plan. So you'll need the rationale. So that's explaining why you chose this particular topic. So you might like to relate it to your local area. It might be something that the children, it affects their daily life, or it might be an event that's coming up, something that's of interest to them that gives the reason for why you've actually done it. This could also be a chance if you're going to present a lesson that's part of a bigger learning approach, like an inquiry lesson or something from the 5 E's that we're looking at this week. You could mention in your rationale where your lesson fits in amongst that. You might want to mention that you've already done, 2 lessons in this unit and this is the 3rd lesson, something like that. That would be your chance to pop that in there. This is also where you can add in some scholarly literature and references to actually support the decisions that you've made. So if you've chosen a particular style of learning for this one, maybe it's a play-based activity, you can support that decision with some readings and some references. Like Peter said, in the flipped Collab this is a really tight word limit. So each lesson's 500 words. Don't be trying to put quotes in there. Just you just reference, your in-text referencing is all you need. You won't have enough room. So you really need to be nice and concise. Excuse me. Then you've got the objectives. So this is really looking at your SMART goals as well that you've been looking at this week. So you want to be very specific about the skills that you're trying to teach the children. So thinking back to what we've been talking about, there should be some skills in there. There could be some science processing skills. So perhaps they're learning about how to predict weather forecasts, or maybe the skill is a measurement skill. They're measuring the growth of what am I trying to say, of beans. So that might be your science skill, but make sure as well that you have your technology skills listed in there as well. So whether it's a design skill, whether it's developing their design thinking and generating ideas, or if it's evaluating their design ideas, something like that. Or for technology, it might be some of those skills using the photos and the videos that we've just talked about in the chat, or the walkie-talkies. So make sure those skills are nice and clear in there, and do think about keeping those with the SMART goals in mind. So keep in mind that they're measurable and that they're appropriate for that particular lesson. Oh, beautiful. That's exactly what I was just explaining. So yeah, just you don't stress too much about creating every single objective to be written as a SMART goal. If you can, that's great, but remember that we're quite bound on our words. So if you haven't covered every single little bit of that, just mainly make sure it's specific and that it's achievable. Make sure that it's not, that the ideas aren't too sophisticated, or the skills aren't too sophisticated for your students, that it's actually achievable and relevant. And then with time bound, we're going to be sort of assuming that it's going to be something by the end of this lesson. So you don't need to you probably don't need to state that if it's obvious, because I don't want you to use up too many of your words. I can just see Simone's mentioned about how long the lessons go for, and I think that's going to be right here. So each of the lessons is a standalone lesson. Depending on the environment you're teaching in, the timing might be slightly different. So early learning centres, sometimes they might have something set up as a space for sort of half the day, perhaps. In a classroom setting, so when you're looking at your foundation lessons, it's a lot more structured. You're very limited when it comes to a primary school setting. So generally our lessons are 45, 50 minutes. Sometimes if it's an appropriate activity that you can engage children in for a longer period, you could do it over a double session. So you'd be looking at sort of an hour 20 minutes, something like that, max really. But remember that this is just one standalone lesson, but it could be part of a bigger series. So keep that in mind. Don't feel that you have to cram everything into this one lesson. Really make this particular lesson really clear on what you're trying to achieve, and then you can mention in the rationale that maybe the follow-on activity the next day is going to further explore this, or maybe before this lesson there's already been a little bit of tuning in and exploring the concepts. Don't try and jam everything into that 45 minutes or an hour. It'll just be way too much. Okay, we've got some reminders. Oh yes, the teaching strategies, fantastic. So I just want to encourage you again. I just checked the Padlet today to make sure that it's still, that the assignment 2 Padlet has still got the teaching strategies and the teaching approach document. So that was also there for assignment 1, and I recommended people look at it for that as well, because it's really useful. So have a look on the Padlet. I would recommend print it out and keep it there with you, so that you can refresh yourself on different teaching strategies. So you're not just always using, say, questioning. Questioning's great, but show that way you can demonstrate to us that you are aware of different strategies. You can choose ones that are most oh good, Simone printed it out today. That way you're choosing the strategies most relevant to that particular lesson. So that's a really helpful. thing to do. So have a look at that and try and use some different strategies. It hasn't got every single strategy in the world, but there are some good ideas on there. Support the discussion, obviously, with academic literature and the curriculum documents. Make sure that you have got your curriculum documents there, that you have content descriptors if it is the foundation lessons, and that you also have your early years outcomes for those early years lessons. So we've got the early years for 3 to 5 Australian curriculum. We had a little bit of a conversation in the chat about I'm echoing back to myself. That's terrible. Okay, it stopped. About the newer version of the curriculum. You are very welcome to use 8.4. That's absolutely fine. And also don't forget you can use your state curriculum documents as well. So just be consistent. That's all across your folio. Make sure you've got some justification in there. Oh yes, the planning and editing. I think we say this so many times, but it's really, really helpful if you read your work aloud when you're editing it. You'll really spot any sort of clunky use of language if you do that. And it's also important in your plan. You'll see that there's a spot in the lesson plans and the learning plans for assessment. So again, this is a chance for you to demonstrate your knowledge of different assessment strategies and the ones that are most relevant. So keep that in mind when you're filling that in, and also make sure that you really remind yourself that when you're assessing, you are assessing the objectives that you outlined at the beginning of your lesson. So make sure that you don't sort of get led astray and start assessing something different that wasn't actually the goal of the lesson. So keep reminding yourself, if your goal is for the students to learn how to take a photo that is in focus and save it to their camera roll, that's what you want to assess. So you might use a checklist and you will tick off for each student if they've been able to do that independently or if they've needed to do it with support, something like that. So make sure that you don't then start assessing the quality of the photo, because that's not your objective for that lesson. And the APA referencing, of course. Okay, so these are the actual samples. So these can be downloaded off the Padlet, and you need to make sure you're using the appropriate one for your context. So if you've chosen to do all early childhood, then this would be your learning plan. So if we I don't want to take a long time reading it all to you, but if I just sort of go through it nice and quickly, you don't have to give it a title if you don't want to, but you can. You've got your links to the framework in there. Then we've got the concepts that are being explored. So that area there would be a great spot if you did want to have a look at the Victorian curriculum ABCD areas, because if you're having trouble sort of putting those ideas into words, that can really help you with that. So by all means, have a look at it. But you can see here that they have both a digital technology concept, which is an iPad can be used to capture images, and they also have that science concept about daily and seasonal changes. So they're the two content and concepts that are being explored. Then there's a rationale that explains that it's currently autumn and students have been collecting autumn leaves. So they're relating this learning to things that are going on in the children's daily life, which is something that they're going to be interested in. And as we all know, you really want to get, follow children's own interests and curiosity. So that's sort of the rationale there. You could support that with a reference as well, because there's no reference there, but you certainly could support that. We all know that those that student interest is really important. The background knowledge, it says here that some of them have got some experience with iPads, some haven't, so that's very relevant here for that skill of learning how to use an iPad. You could pop that in there for the background knowledge. Now, the objectives for the lesson, we've got students will learn how to turn on the iPad, locate the camera icon, position the camera correctly, use the zoom feature to capture one clear image. So that's very specific, and we will be able to measure that quite easily. So if each of those things are achieved, that's measurable. And the good thing about that learning objective is because it's broken up into quite a few different steps, it really means when you are assessing, even if they don't complete it all, you can actually see how many different bits they completed, and you can see where you need to take them with their learning for the next lesson. If they've got 2 of the skills, you know where to move them to. Environment and resources. So whereabouts are you going to be having this lesson? What sort of resources will you need to use? You can fill that in there. Just keep it brief because of the word count. And then they haven't actually filled anything in for the assessment strategies. Certainly a checklist would work perfectly for that, because as I said, you could make a checklist that tells you whether or not they can turn on the iPad. Tick, do they locate the camera icon? Tick, position the camera correctly. Tick. So it's a really nice, clear checklist, really quick and easy to do, very specific measurable data that you would have at the end of the lesson. Okay, so this is where we go into some detail about what the lesson's going to look like. So for the learning plan, you can pop teaching strategies in here. So when you're explaining the teacher's actions, that would be where you can pop in the strategies they're going to use, the questioning techniques, things like that. This can certainly be dot points in here, nice and short, and do put some times in there as well. So make sure you time it out. In the far column, that's the children's actions. So what will they actually be doing during this time? So if it's the iPad, they might be then working with a partner perhaps to locate the on/off button, something like that. Or they might be moving around the garden and selecting a plant to photograph. Okay, so something like that. What the teacher's going to do to set them up, and then what the child is going to do is in the next column. Should I check if there's any? Oh, go ahead, Steph.
Sorry, Peter, I wasn't looking at the last slide because I was manning the comment section. But Donna just asked, was everything in the green on the example in our word count? Can you just confirm that that's correct for me, please?
Everything in the green is yes. So all these things here in the green, 100%.
Perfect.
That's the
Thank
word
you so much.
count. Yeah,
Just wanted
good
to
question.
double check that out.
Beautiful. Okay, jump back. So yeah, all the and actually, and you've already covered, I think, Steph, earlier, which is good, the actual number of words that are in the template, so you guys don't have to count them all up again. So you can just count whatever's in the green that you've added into the template. Same for here. So at the moment, everything that's on your screen at the moment would not be counted in your word count. It would be what you fill in all these boxes in. That's going to be your word count. Now this part is it's part of the template because we use this across lots of different SOL subjects. However, for this assignment, you do not need to complete it at all. So by all means, you can leave it there as part of your document if you'd like. That's fine, but don't waste any of your words in this section. You don't need to do the evaluation. You can totally leave that blank. Okay, now this is the lesson plan that we use for primary lessons. So for anyone who's choosing to do 2 foundation lessons, those 2 lessons would be on this template. So for those people who are doing early years and foundation, you're actually going to be working across the 2 templates. You'll do 2 in the learning plan we just looked at, and the other 2, you'll be using this lesson plan. It's really similar. So again, we've got a title, we've got so as you can see on there, they've put the duration of the lesson at 45 minutes. That is sort of the standard lesson in a primary school. But then, like I said, there is the option to go a little bit longer if you feel that you need to. So we've got the 2 different learning areas again. They've got the science area as well as the design and technology area. And there's content descriptors for both of them. Now, your content descriptors are also not counted in your word count for this assignment. So that's really helpful. You don't need to worry about those. So please do actually list them out for us. Don't just put the codes. It won't be counted. Okay, so again, we've got that lesson rationale, the same as the last one. Oh, Kylie's got a question. Go ahead, Kylie. I'll be quiet.
Sorry, can I just double check? Because before I asked, can we just write the code and hyperlink it? And that was, yes, hyperlinks are great. Here you're saying we need to type out the content descriptors. Can I just double check, please?
Steph, was that you and I doing different things?
Sorry, that was my bad. Yep.
No, don't worry. It's probably one of those things, Kylie, where it's like a preference between. So I think from what we were talking about in the ELA chat earlier, I think everyone sort of wanted the content descriptors written out. Was that your understanding, Steph?
Yeah, so I think we had it confirmed that they weren't included in the word count. And I know this comes up every TP, doesn't it, for whatever unit, and sometimes they are included in the word count, but it's not for science and technology.
Yeah,
So
it's
it doesn't
definitely not in
matter.
the word count.
So
And if you
I'd
did,
say that's why it is a preference for us to include it, because I guess it has, yeah.
it's just a bit easier for us if
Yeah.
it's there. Yeah, because we haven't memorized every content description, but at least a hyperlink is better than nothing. The main thing that's really hard is when it's just a content descriptor code and then we have to go and go looking for it. So a hyperlink's better than nothing, but if you could copy and paste it, that would be really great. Go ahead, Kylie.
So is it fair to say that the word count really starts with the lesson rationale rather than the top section?
Well, technically, the other words are included, but there's not a whole lot of them. So, like yes and no. I mean, those other ones are. When you list the learning area and the lesson title, and the topic, they are technically, and even the year level, they technically are. There's not very many words there, luckily. Is that okay, Carly? Do you want to? I'm going to hope that was okay. Sure. Okay, beautiful. Thank you. Okay, so the rationale, again, this is really similar to before. So you're relating it, you're explaining what's made you decide to teach the students about this area. So here we've got the students are learning about the local natural environment and the needs of living things, blah, blah, blah. So they're also giving the background to this lesson. It says, after a group brainstorming session and further research, the class decided that the best way to do this was to install a number of different bird feeders. So as you can tell from this lesson, there's been a whole bunch of learning leading up to this lesson. So by all means, you can have a rationale like that. You don't need to try and present the entire unit of work. The background knowledge of the students. So again, here, because you've been investigating already, so this is a lesson that's coming sort of towards the end of an inquiry unit, I would assume. So they've got background knowledge at all, and you can state that there. So you're not having to now teach them about bird species and all that sort of stuff. They've already got that learning. They're going to be applying that learning by designing this particular thing that they're designing. So that's in the background knowledge part. Now I'm going across to the teacher focus. What area will you be concentrating on? So this is a really great way to talk about the teaching strategies of what you would like to be using. So, what kind of learning is going to work best? Maybe the focus is to have them understand the design cycle, or maybe it's to get them to work collaboratively on their design, something like that. So you'd have a focus for your teaching for this lesson. Then you've got your learning objectives, which is very similar to the last one, where you're actually going to be nice and specific on what it is that you'd like them to learn from this particular lesson. So not the whole unit overall, but this particular 45-minute lesson. And then the environment where it's happening, what resources you need to organise prior to the lesson. Now, this one has got the assessment strategies listed, which is awesome. So it's got photographic records of designs will be retained, and then there is a design checklist. So let's have a look at our learning objectives. It's got design a suitable feeder that allows multiple birds to feed. Describe how design ideas meet the bird's needs. So what you'd want to be clear on then when you're using that design checklist is that those are the objectives you're looking for. So perhaps your design checklist would be looking to see if the design was labelled to show how multiple birds can feed from it, and perhaps it was labelled to show different needs that it's meeting. Now you can see on there they've put design checklist C appendix. If you would like to create any checklists, or someone mentioned earlier about you providing some photos, you can do that and add them into an appendix. They do not count in your word count if you do that. You don't have to do that though, but it is available if you'd like to. And again, this was really similar to the early learning one. So make sure you give your times in that second column. And then you're going to be outlining the teaching strategies that are going to be used by the teacher, and then what the students will be doing as well. And again, you don't need to do the evaluation bit. You can just skip past that section. Okay, just having a look. So that's exactly what I've just spoken about. So no, you don't need to for this assignment. And as I said, they're just there because this is a template that hopefully you guys are familiar with, that you've used in other subjects, or yeah, it's one that's been outlined for lots of uses. So that's why it's there, but it's not necessary here. Okay, so same as assignment 1, this is a holistic rubric, which means that you need to meet every single criteria in order to be awarded that mark. So just really make sure, I strongly recommend that you print out the rubric, keep a copy of that with you as well while you're doing your folio. Make sure that you're really clear on everything that we will be looking for when we're assessing you, so that you can meet each of those. It's so important. So if you start off with the pass, make sure you've met everything in that pass criteria, and then you can, from there, you can add improvements and go further and further up the rubric. But if you haven't met all of these, then we really can't award you as high a mark as we would like to. So the planning needs to include all the elements that are outlined in the assignment details. So that's everything we've gone over with you. Make sure that you've got each science category covered, that you've done 2 design tech and 2 digital tech. The planning demonstrates so this says a developing understanding of the practice of planning, teaching, and assessment. So that's talking about show us that you've got a good knowledge of teaching strategies, that you know some assessment strategies, that you can apply them appropriately for the year level that you're teaching, or the activity that you're exploring. A developing understanding of curriculum documents and effective pedagogy. So make sure you've given us your content descriptors, your outcomes. You could refer perhaps to the rationales that are provided on the curriculum documents. That could be a little bit of support for why you are teaching this particular thing. You could use that as a reference to support your decision. Also, effective pedagogy, that's a really great chance to mention some of those things that people might have mentioned in assignment 1, the play-based learning, some hands-on learning, inquiry learning, the 5 E's approach that we've been learning about, all that sort of stuff. So that's how you demonstrate that effective pedagogy, by including those things in your folio, in your lesson plans, and making sure that you're referencing there so that you can demonstrate why they are effective teaching strategies and effective approaches. Oh, there we go. So that's what I'm just saying about all the sections. Make sure you justify your choices. So that's where you show us that you have used some scholar resources. Use the things that have been provided in the modules. They're always really good quality readings that you can use. So make sure that they're there, and of course cite them correctly, and make sure that their writing is nice and clear and well edited. Okay, so here are just some tips. So hopefully let's hope that we've covered this already for you guys. So check curriculum documents and make sure your lesson plans are pedagogically valid. So why have you chosen these experiences, and how do they meet the outcomes and the content descriptors? So that's the sort of stuff you'd be mentioning in your rationale. So what made you choose to do this? So again, it might relate to the children's background. It might relate to the whereabouts in Australia they live, or something that's been going on in the news of late, something like that. So that's going to be some of the reasons. But then pedagogically valid, I suppose you would be wanting to make sure that they are using strategies and approaches that are really relevant to the age that you're teaching. Oh, okay, so this second dot point is a really important one, and Steph already mentioned it at the start as well. So especially when it comes to digital technology, so you really want to make sure that you are have a look carefully at the curriculum documents. And again, that Victorian curriculum ABCD is really helpful for early years ideas on things you can explore with them. So just to make sure that you are really looking for some learning that is going to be valid for the students. It's not just about having them play a game on an iPad. That's not the sort of learning that we're looking for. So even if you find, let's say we're learning about science, and you find a game to do with water and they play a water game, that's not teaching them digital technology skills. It might teach them a bit about water, which would be great, but remember, we want them to actually be developing digital technology skills. So it's really important to keep coming back to that all the time. Make sure you've got your links in there, and clearly note the content being explored. So again, that's looking at those conceptual understandings that we would talked about a lot with assignment 1. So you want to make sure that those concepts are written in your plan, are really relevant to your age group. Don't try to go exploring anything too sophisticated with the students. And then, as I mentioned earlier as well, make sure that you then keep taking yourself back to what those concepts are. Don't go off on a tangent. So if the concept that you're trying to teach them is that the Earth's weather can change all the time, make sure that you've got that in the front of mind when you're writing your lesson. 8:45. I feel like I've been talking forever. Okay. Oh, here's some great resources. So this is on the Padlet as well, guys. So I won't go into this for ages, but they're good places to look for ideas. Obviously, don't just directly copy their lessons that they're providing for you, but by all means, if you cite them, you can use some of the great ideas, but you want to write your own lesson. So the background knowledge and all that's going to be unique to your situation. The rationale for the lesson is going to be your own, and even the structure of the lesson would be whatever suits your needs. They're not, as teachers, we do that all the time. You're never really able to just use one of these lessons anyway. You do still need to, create the lesson that's going to specifically meet your needs, but you'll be able to adapt a lot of the great ideas that are on these websites. So by all means, have a look at them and do cite them if you do use their things. Okay, so this is just the normal extension requests. So you guys hopefully know how to go through and do those in Canvas. So by all means, go ahead and do those. Do keep in mind with the second assignment that we can't sort of push out extensions, a long time because the teaching period ends. So do keep that in mind. And lucky last, that's it. That's the end. So have we got any questions? I can see the chat's been going crazy there, Steph. Well done. There's all kinds of, has anyone got anything they would like to ask? You're very welcome to just jump on the mic. So, sorry guys, I'm telling Donna, no, I don't think there's an advantage to either option. I don't think. What do you think? I think they're both. It's whatever. It's sort of whatever you're most interested in, I suppose. If you work in an early years environment and you plan on sort of working in there in the long run, then perhaps go with that. But otherwise, I think either of them would be great. There's not an advantage. It's just a choice up to you. Now, Kahicha has said intro stage to the experience. An example would be steps to group the pairs. Yes, absolutely. That would be what the teacher would be doing. Most definitely. And if you want to think, I'm just going to think of what I was just doing today. I taught foundation students today, and as one of my teaching strategies for grouping my children is I've printed out a bunch of pretty picture cards and laminated them, and I use them all the time, and I simply hand those out, and then they have to go and find their matching buddy, and so that's a teaching strategy right there that helps to get them into pairs, because it's just the quickest way of doing it and making sure I can get different collaborative groups happening all the time. So that's definitely a strategy that you could put in the plan. The strategy is to tailor the activities for all levels and inspire collaboration. Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Students, yeah, that's really, really good. So absolutely, that would be a great thing to list in there. And if you can find a reference to, some of the benefits of collaboration, or even say, I'm trying to think of a benefit to, mixed abilities, that would back you up as well, because you've got some really good ideas there that you're presenting. I'm talking to Kahija, by the way. I hope I've pronounced your name properly. I love that strategy. So yeah, give it some support and find some academic support to justify your choice. Beautiful. Steph, is there anything you would like to add?
No, Peter, I'm just answering Donna's question. She asked, can we use recipes as a design idea for cooking and Play-Doh? And I would suggest so design is about creating the children using their imagination. So if they're creating a new recipe, absolutely. If it's following a recipe, I don't think it involves that much creativity because they're following a recipe, but creating
Yeah,
their
I
own
agree.
100%. Yeah.
Yep. And especially because if you think about that testing and improving side of it, Donna, you could imagine if they created a recipe that it would be great fun to, cook it and then taste it, see if it's any good, improve the design. So the recipe would be kind of like a design brief. So yeah, I think as long as they're creating their own, that would work great. I think that's it then, Steph. If we've got nothing else to add, and all the questions, if anyone else has got another question, by all means jump in so we don't miss you. Would we assess the ability for children to take legible photos, delete the ones they don't need? Yes. Only 5 spots of photos, must choose 5 out of 100. Yes, and like the example we looked at a little bit further back in the slides, with that digital activity, the good thing is that you've got multiple things you're actually looking for there. So can they take a legible photo? That would be something you could put on a checklist. Can they also delete the ones that they don't need? Can they arrange them, in terms of best and worst or something like that? So I like the way you've got specific different skills, which just makes your assessment really nice and clear. And it also means that if you've got a whole bunch of children who can take legible photos but they can't delete the illegible ones, then that gives you your next lesson right there. You know the skill already to carry on. So yes, that looks good. I think that's it then. So we've still got, oh, hang on, one of all the questions I have tonight. Beautiful. Okay, so we've still got a few people here, but I'm thinking we could switch off the recording now. Steph? Oh, hang on, Kylie. Go ahead, Kylie.
So I just want to double check because there's lots of mention of 0 to 5, but in the assignment details it said for 3 to 5 years. Can you just confirm either way, please?
It is 3 to 5, isn't it, Steph? That's what I was.
Yes.